Hello everyone! Today we're gonna be making the AK-47 and if we're talking more precisely, the Handguard, the iron sights and the Buttstock. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start with the Handguard. Now I've got some references over here as you can see. So we can see that there's a small metal part. So we're gonna start by adding our 3D cursor right over here and adding a plane. Rotate it on Y by 90 degrees. Now we turn off this. Now take this face and extrude it and make it a little bit thick. Take these two vertices and pull them a little bit down. Now to make this lower handguard, just select this plane, Shift E to duplicate it, P to separate it, and it's gonna be a separate object as you can see here. That's just what we need. Now what I would do, I would move this object just slightly a bit so we defined a small gap over here. It does not matter, it's not going to be visible that it's not connected, so you don't have to bother with that. Now what you're going to do, you're going to want to basically extrude and shape this lower vertex to make this slight bump over here. Alright, and at the end, just extrude it once again and pull this vertex a little bit up. Select these two objects and select these edges and these down edges over here and just bevel them with, I don't know, like 7 segments. Just be sure to remember how many segments you're doing it with because it's gonna help you a little bit later. Now you can shade both smooth and this looks pretty good. And now as you can see, this part has these small like holes in here, just right here. So we're gonna do that by adding a loop cut to define this basic shape of it. Add a loop cut in the middle of it and bevel it with one segment so you get this shape over here. Now we're just going to pull it down by Z-axis and do the same thing over here. Now select this upper face and snap it with vertex snapping by Z-axis on this, so it's all even. Alright, and once you have done that, just select these faces over here, Shift D to duplicate them, P to separate. Now select this part, add your 3D cursor on it, and add your origin to 3D cursor. Now you're going to mirror it by Z-axis, and you're gonna pull it up just slightly so it matches the reference. Now I can see here that this part is a little bit long, so I'm just gonna move it a little bit on the X-axis. Now I'll take everything and extrude it upwards. Place one of your vertices on the edge over here and put your 3D cursor over there. Now select everything up here. Make sure that your pick point is set to 3D cursor and scale it on Z-axis by 0 so it flattens everything. Now you want to basically make this slight shape that it goes down. Just start basically arranging it just like this. Just like that. Now it's not that visible, but it does not matter. So now just take all the edges over here and you're going to bevel them with 7 segments just like that. And this looks pretty good to me, but what I'm gonna do, I'm going to bevel all these loops to get a little bit more round shape. So select both of these and I'll do it like 2 segments maximum, okay? And this looks pretty good. Alright, and once you've done that, now I can see that this part has these metal pieces over here. We're going to define that by deleting the lower face over here on this upper part and insetting this with boundary off. Okay, extrude it slightly and Shift D to duplicate this and P to separate the selection. Now you might as well delete the face over here because you don't need it, and take the new object that you made, put your 3D cursor down here, select and make sure your pivot point is set to 3D cursor and scale it up so it matches the reference. Okay, once you've done that, just extrude it to make it a little bit thick and bevel it without this lower part. Alright, and once you've scaled it and beveled it and everything, this part is done. Now I can see there's this a little bit smaller part So I'm going to just define it by extruding this a little bit. And now what you're gonna do is just gonna fill the face that you deleted over here. So select all the surrounding vertices and fill it with an icon, it doesn't matter. Now if you don't care about your poly count, you can take these edges and bevel them. Okay, just slightly. But I wouldn't recommend you to do that because it might create these shading issues. Plus, it's gonna make your life much difficult when unwrapping this model. So yeah, I'll just leave it like this. Okay, we are done with the handstock part. Now let's go and do this buttstock. I don't have a reference over here, but I can surely see over here that there's a small part coming from the receiver. So we're gonna do that. Now, for some reason, when I add my 3D cursor, it just adds not in the middle of it, so I'll put my 3D cursor over here, it doesn't matter. Create a plane from the upper view, just scale it so it matches your reference. Now select everything, slightly extrude it down, and push this geometry a little bit down. Okay. Make sure that it's a little bit taller than the buttstock itself because it's gonna make a nice effect once we add the buttstock. Flip all your faces and I might as well move this edge just a little bit in it. So now you take these two edges and bevel them with a few segments and merge everything. And you're basically ready with this piece, shade auto smooth, and it should be pretty good. It should be good to go. Now I'm not making like much details on this as this is not going to be visible on the model because the buttstock is going to be covering it, so it doesn't matter. And add a cube, and from the upper view just scale it down so it matches the reference. Now select these vertices, push them a little bit in, select this one, also pull it down. This part you are going to extrude and align it with the reference. So select everything, extrude, and push it maybe a little bit up. Add a loop cut maybe and push a little bit down. But here you're going to be just aligning it with the reference down here as well. Once you have done that, just select all these vertices and push it back just like this so it matches the reference. Now I can clearly see that there's this small curve over here, so I'm just gonna add two loop cuts and move them slightly in, and that should be for the shape of the receiver. Right, now I don't have a, as I said, I don't have a reference, but I can show you here. As you can see, this part is much less beveled than this part, and it's not easy to make that transition, you know. It's pretty difficult to do it manually, but don't worry, I got your back. So I'm gonna show this cool trick on how to do that. So first up, you're gonna add a loop cut and place it where your transition should start. Yeah, you're gonna bevel it, and as you can see, my transition should start somewhere over here. Select these two edges, bevel them with, for example, 7 segments, and remember that it's 7. Now select these opposite edges, without these of course, and bevel them a little bit more with 7 segments. Alright, as you can see, it looks pretty horrible, but do not worry. We're just going to delete the geometry over here, delete faces, and you're just gonna bridge these edge loops. It still doesn't look perfect, so I'm just gonna add a loop cut and I'm going to bevel it a few times. And just play around with the geometry, add some supporting loop cuts and stuff. Just be sure to make the transition as smooth as possible. Alright, and this should look pretty good. As you can see, we got a smaller bevel transitioning into much bigger bevel. Okay, now what I would do, I would select these down edges over here and loop tools, G-stretch it. Now, sure, it breaks the geometry quite a bit, but I'm just gonna press spread only and it should be pretty good. Again, bevel them with 7 segments, and this part is ready. Now I can see here that this smaller iron part is a little bit like different, so we're just gonna select this, we are going to shift duplicate it and separate it with P, so it's a different object. Set your pivot point to medium point, and of course put your origin to 3D cursor. Scale this down, extrude it, extrude, scale it down, scale it up, I meant to say. Move it a little bit and extrude it. Now just select these edges over here and simply bevel them with a few segments. Okay, we are done with the buttstock. Now moving on to the probably most annoying and probably the most personalized part of the model. Okay, because all the iron sights are different for the AK-47. I got some screenshots from Call of Duty because I was not able to find any like close reference, so I just took couple of screenshots over here. As you can see, this should be enough. So I can clearly see even from this reference that it's just a simple block. It's cut out like this. Then it has this part over here, which is a little bit smaller than this base. And then there's a small part sticking out of this part. So I understand by that I'm just going to simply put my 3D cursor somewhere over here, add a plane, scale it down till it matches the reference, or something like this probably should be good. Move my vertices so it aligns with all these, and of course so it aligns with the receiver. Select everything, extrude it up. Now I'm gonna be breaking the topology over here, so I'm very sorry to all the people that love making good topology, but this is not what it's about. Another loop cut over here and here. Now move these vertices a little bit to the side and bevel them with like 3 segments. Okay, and just delete this geometry, the useless geometry over here. Dissolve these vertices over here. Now you can see we got this shape where it needs to be cut out, so I'm just going to select everything that shouldn't be here, which are these faces. Delete faces, and I'm just gonna fill this with quads over here. Of course, bevel this, as you can see on the reference over here. Bevel it, and yeah, this part should be ready to go. You can shade it as smooth. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add my 3D cursor over here. I'm going to add a plane, and I'm going to scale it down just so it's a little bit smaller than this part. Okay, you can of course look at this reference, and this is perfect. This is good. Now I would move this a little bit down to be sure that it's fully covered, and move these vertices slightly over here and extrude it upwards. Over this a little bit. Add 2 loop cuts over here, add 1 loop cut over here, bevel it, and pull these 2 vertices up. Another loop cut, pull this vertice up, and another 2 loop cuts and pull this vertice up like this, so it gets this round shape over here. Now over here I can see that we have to cut out this. So I'm just gonna use my knife tool. You know, I might have as well used the knife tool over here, but I don't know why I didn't use it. It does not matter. C to cut through and just start cutting this shape. Okay. Enter and delete this geometry over here. Delete faces and fill this with quads. Alright, this looks good. Now we're gonna simply make this part that sticks out. I can see that it's a little bit inset. Okay, and it's extruded inwards slightly. And I'll probably just inset and extrude this up a little bit. Add 2 loop cuts and scale them according to the reference. Select this face. You're going to extrude it on x-axis. So extrude it, make it the same length as this. And I can clearly see that the shape is pretty good, though this part has to be cut out. So add a loop cut in the middle over here and add another supporting loop cut over here. Select these and scale them on y-axis a little bit. I'm going to select these vertices and just snap it on like this, so we get this so it aligns with this vertex. Add a loop cut over here, which is going to define this the iron side. Select this face, extrude it up, and now just add 2 loop cuts over here, scale it a little bit probably, and delete these faces. Move these vertices a little bit on the x-axis and just fill these faces just like that. Now I can see that in the middle there's a small hole over here, so I'm just going to inset this slightly and scale it on by y-axis and extrude it down. I'll take these 2 faces, these 2 edges, and I'm going to bevel them with like 3 segments just like that. And now I can just add a couple of loop cuts over here, bevel them with 1 segment, press Alt E, extrude face along normals, and to define these basically small gaps over here. These are not gaps, but it's just gonna help us. It just makes the model look better, okay? Let's be honest with each other. Okay, you can bevel these edges over here with like 3 segments. Shade auto smooth, just like that, increase the angle a little bit. Now it's pretty easy, just add your 3D cursor somewhere over here. I'm just gonna add a circle with like 16 vertices, don't go too crazy on this. Rotate it on x-axis and scale it down just like this, and put your cylinder just where it should be, somewhere around here. Now from the upper reference, you're just going to align it with the reference. And now just extrude on the y-axis. I'll probably fill this face, inset it, and extrude it once again. Okay. And now fill this face, inset, and extrude. Might as well add a bevel over here and over here. Shade it smooth. Now what you're gonna do, you're gonna set your pivot point to 3D cursor. You're going to shift duplicate this, and you're going to mirror it on the y-axis, just like that. Now you can join these 2, flip the faces, set the auto smooth angle to something higher so it looks good. Okay, and you are basically ready modeling. Now we're gonna start unwrapping it. Alright, proceeding to the unwrapping stage, we're gonna start unwrapping the handguard. So nothing difficult, just add a loop cut over here, mark it as seam, mark these faces as seam, a loop cut over here and mark it as seam. Let me isolate this, mark these edges as seam and this edge down here. Mark these side edges as a seam, and of course this back face, mark it as a seam. And as you of course love it, add the UV test material to this part. Make a new material, name it UV, name it UV, add an image texture, create a new one. You can set this to whatever you want, 32-bit float, UV grid, color to color, and unwrap it, and this looks good. And do the same thing over here, unwrap, and this looks good. To unwrap this, nothing too difficult, add a loop cut down here, select the sharp edges over here, mark seam, UV test to this, UV, unwrap, and this looks good. For the handguard, add a loop cut down here, mark it as a seam, mark these sharp edges as a seam, the sharp edge over here as a seam. Should be good to go. Just add the UV test material to this, UV, unwrap, good. For this buttstock iron part, nothing difficult, basically the same thing, just add a seams on this part and over here. You don't have to do anything here as it's not going to be visible, so just mark seam, apply the UV material, and this looks good. for this receiver extension part, this face, this face, this face, and the edge over here, mark it as a seam, apply the UV material, UV unwrap, and this looks good. And now for this iron side part, this is going to be a little bit complicated, but nothing too difficult. Just mark these two faces as seams. I'm going to probably isolate this part, mark these face over here as a seam, add a seam over here, add a seam over here, and of course add a seam over here, and this should be ready to be unwrapped. So UV unwrap, good. This part, again, nothing difficult. These sharp edges as a seam, mark these sharp edges as a seam, mark seam. Also mark these two edges, mark this outer ring or whatever this is, mark it as a seam. Same thing to the inside part, mark seam, and you might as well mark seam this extension. You basically just go and mark seams to the sharp edges on the model. So this is not difficult. Mark seam. Now for this part, this is probably not gonna be too obvious, but basically just select these edges, mark them as seams, and just with alt click select all these edges and simply mark it as a seam. For this down part, just mark this shape over here as a seam, and this upper part as a seam. And you might as well mark seam these, I don't know what's the shape, mark seam. Just run around and place the seams on the sharp edges of the model. And now just give it a test by adding the UV material and UV unwrapping it. And this part, I don't think you even need an explanation for this. Just mark seam these. Just add a loop cut over here and mark these edges as a seam. Add the UV material, UV unwrap, good. Alright, and once you've done unwrapping, I'm gonna want you to select everything that you did today. Alright, so all the meshes that you created today, this includes everything. This, control copy, you're going to save this project. I'm gonna control copy all the objects you made today. File, new, general, delete the default cube, paste it in here. Delete the UV material from every single object in the scene. Now you need to start adding them those materials. So this is a hand. So I'm gonna name this Handguard low, Handguard up. Name this Handguard up metal, Handguard low metal. Now for the iron sights, I'm gonna name them IS1 as iron sight 1 and IS2 as iron sight 2 and IS3 as the cylinder. So select this object IS1, select this object IS2, and the cylinders IS3. Now this part, I'm going to name it receiver extension. This part I'm gonna name it Buttstock, and this part I'm going to name it Buttstock iron. Okay, and once you've done that, just export this as an FBX file, save it wherever you want it. I'm going to save it as part 3 additions. Open up Substance Painter. Once you've opened Substance Painter, just close this window, File, New, select your file, set the document resolution to 2K, uncheck the auto unwrap, select OpenGL and press OK. You should be getting something like this. Now before you start doing anything else, just bake the mesh maps. It's in texture set settings on the bottom. Select the output size, for example 2K. Now today I realized that by baking everything in 2K, it's making the file size just a little too big. But I guess I'm gonna be changing it in my next project, but here I'm just gonna maintain the 2K. So select 2K over here, all the maps you need, bake selected textures. If you've unwrapped everything correctly, you should be getting this beautiful baked shape over here. As you can see, there are no artifacts, but if they are, it's probably either an unwrap issue or you did something geometry wise. But from here, the job is pretty easy. Just head on to Smart Materials and select and drag and drop the materials that we created in the previous part. So you gotta check that out to make those. I'm not gonna show you in this video. So AK-47 metal, I can see that this this black is basically the metal, the main metal. So I'm just gonna drag and drop everything over here. AK-47 metal over here. And for the wood, of course, just drag and drop the wood, but we're not gonna leave it like this. We are going to select the wood, head on to properties and rotate it so it faces this way because it's more realistic. And I might as well put it UV projection and rotate it. Now drag and drop the materials from here and just do the same thing by rearranging the wood basically so it faces the correct way. Alright, and for this iron part, just simply head on to this first tab, search for iron and put whatever iron material you like. Alright, and once you're ready, just hit File, Export Textures, select your directory, name the folder properly. I'm gonna name it Part 3, and I'm going to paste it in here. Set the size to 2K or whatever you wanted and press export. Alright, once it's done exporting, you can close Substance Painter. I'm going to save this to my special folder called Substance, so I'll call this Part 3 and save it. Once you have closed the Substance Painter, you can copy this over here and open the AK-47 file. You don't have to even save it. Delete everything and paste it again, so you get the stuff with already the materials applied. And now what you're gonna do, you're gonna head on to Shading tab, and you are going to simply just apply all the materials. So this is hand grip up, so Ctrl+Shift+T. I hope you have your node wrangler turned on. HG up. Select everything without the metal, okay? Without the metal addition, that's a different part. And put it onto your model, just like that. And do it with all the parts. Alright, and once you have applied everything, you should be getting a beautiful result like this. As you can see, this looks pretty good. Everything is unwrapped correctly, and just look at this transition. Once we have applied the material, this looks absolutely amazing to me. So I hope this trick helped you, okay? And that is it for today. I really hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for the barrel part and for the details part, okay? So next part, expect it to be the barrel. And for the next part, it's going to be just adding some bolts and details. As you can see, there is a detail over here I haven't added here, so we're gonna do all that. Hope you have a nice day, and bye bye.